Okay, my name is Ben Price. I'm from San Antonio. It's May of 2018, and I'd like to take a few moments and talk about DMX for people who are absolute beginners. The presumption is that you're a DJ, perhaps you do weddings or parties, and you're looking for some wash lights or some other lights for your event, or perhaps you're in a band, a weekend band, and you're looking for some ambiance type lights to go along with the band. There are two, and again this is for beginners, so we're going to keep it sort of conceptual and not specifically get into programming things. There are two basic areas to keep it in mind when you're considering or looking to understand how DMX works. One is the controller, which could be a hardware type controller. You may have an Obey 40 or that kind of thing, or it could be a laptop computer running a program like Freestyler or Show Express, or so forth. So there are a lot of options here, both for the hardware controller as well as the software controller. And then the other thing to keep in mind are the lights. Now, they're called fixtures in the DMX world, and those can range from a simple sort of wash light to maybe you have a set of these par things on a pole up in the air, or maybe you have a moving head. You know, they all kind of work the same. It's really the functionality that they do, called personalities, the functionality that they do in the world of DMX. What I'd like to focus on right now is how these things talk to each other, because DMX really it's a protocol. So it's like when two people are talking to each other, who talks first, who talks second, or two machines are talking to each other. So a protocol is an agreement of exchanging information. So the DMX protocol identifies a method of the controller talking really one way. It's a one-way conversation from the controller over to the fixture. I'd like you to think of this as being a train. So the job of the controller is to generate one of these trains, a DMX train. And the DMX train has 512 cars in the back of it. So it has car number 1, car number 2, up to car number 512. Inside this train car, we can put values in there. And the value we can put in any train car is a number between 0 and 255. So in every train car, there is always a number. It's either 0 or some number between 0 and 255 in every one of these cars. Now imagine that the cable that connects your controller off to your light, your fixture, is really this train track. So multiple times per second, the controller will generate this train and send it down the old train track, which is the cable, off to the fixtures. The fixtures can interact with this train. So let's talk about the fixtures first, because they're going to be the basis of understanding. When a manufacturer makes a fixture, and that could be American DJ or Chauvet, there's lots of manufacturers, they decide what the fixture will do. Now, before we start talking about the DMX thing, I want you to understand that these fixtures typically can operate in 4 different modes. And the first one is sound mode. The next one is automatic mode, master slave, and DMX. We'll talk about these first because they do not require the DMX controller or any of this stuff. You can turn on, you can have a fixture and put it in sound mode. You don't need any of this DMX stuff, and it'll work fine. So sound mode, on the back of the fixture, typically there's a menuing window. Has a little window in it, has some buttons, an up, down button, an enter button, a menu button. Something else I wanted to mention, this is critical, is when you're looking at the fixtures, it's imperative and also important that you have a manual for your fixture. If you don't have the manual for your fixture, that's very bad. So make sure you have the manual. And as well, I'll mention that some of these manuals They've been translated from another language, and I've seen some that are quite challenging to read. However, nonetheless, you absolutely need the manual for each fixture. They don't work the same, so you need a manual for each one of these fixtures. So on the back of the fixture, there's a little menuing thing, and you can press the up, down button, enter, and so forth. And one mode you can put the thing in is sound mode. And again, this will be described in your manual. When you put the fixture in the sound mode, there's a microphone built in to the thing, as well as a little volume control, so you can adjust the sensitivity of the sound. And if you put the fixture in the sound mode, it will just flash along with whatever music it happens to hear. This is a very common mode, probably the most common mode, sound mode. It works great. So again, if you're just looking at a weekend band and you want the lights to do something other than just sit there, sound mode is your solution. Again, you don't even need the Dmx stuff to go into sound mode. The next mode is automatic mode. When the manufacturer creates the fixture, they put in a little computer chip and a little tiny bit of memory. And on this computer chip, they put some programs. And the programs, there may be, let's say, 10 of them. That's determined by the manufacturer. And the automatic mode may say, automatic mode 1, if you put this in automatic mode 1, it may say, turn on the red, turn off the red, turn on the green, turn off the green, turn on the blue, and just kind of flash. So this may stay on for half a second, then this come on for half a second, then the blue come on for half a second, and rotate around. Completely at the discretion of the manufacturer. But the point is, there are probably 10 or so of these automatic modes that are predetermined by the manufacturer, and some fixtures will allow you to create your own sort of automatic mode and save it, program mode. Those are not necessarily terribly handy, but you will definitely see that in the manual. It's handy if you just want something to rotate through the colors or do a chase for chases. So if you want, that's what you're looking for, that can happen as well, automatic mode. The next mode is master slave. If you have your band and you have a couple of these color rail things sitting down in front of you, you want to provide some general lighting for the band, rather than programming all of them, you can connect a cable between the first fixture and the second one, presuming they're identical. And there's a place in the back for the master or slave. Whatever the master does, the slave will do. So if you set the master up to do sound mode and you plug it into the slave, it will do whatever the master does as well. That's kind of handy. So you will probably at some point use a master-slave mode. Again, all three of these do not require Dmx. So now let's talk about Dmx mode. So in Dmx mode, now here's where this train thing kind of comes in. These fixtures, let's use this one, has a built-in computer, and in this computer there's a spot for the red light. We'll call it R, we'll call this one G, B, and for sake of argument we'll call this one strobe. So this particular fixture uses 4 inputs to control the light. Those 4 inputs are values, as we said earlier, between 0 and 255. So if we look at the red light, if it, in this particular little buffer or area, if you put a value of 100 in here, that's roughly halfway between 0 and 255. So the red will illuminate at about half of its capacity. If you put a 0 in here, in this little buffer, turn it off. Same for the green and the blue. And a strobe may be a speed thing, so 0 means don't strobe at all. 100 means a strobe at half your strobe capacity, and 255 may be strobe like crazy. So this information, you actually can go to the menu and go to the red thing and put a value in here directly on the menu. Not very handy, but you can do that. So where does the train come in? Well, when you're programming your fixture on the back and you're putting it into Dmx mode, usually there's a little D here, and then you put in a number, a 3-digit number. That number is any number between 1 and 512. So let's say, for sake of argument, we put this one to D9. What we're telling the fixture by saying this is Dmx mode 9 is it's going to look for those 4 values starting in the 9th rail car. Now we didn't do that here, I'll just say this one is 9, 10, 11, and 12. So when this train comes around and gets to this fixture, the fixture looks into the train. It doesn't destroy the information. Whatever's in there, it leaves, because the train carries on, and the other fixtures can read the information as well. So when the train gets to this particular fixture, it says, oh, I'm going to start getting these 4 bits of information I need, 4 units of information, starting with train car number 9. So it looks in train car number 9, and let's say the value is 100 in there, then 0, and 50, and 0. So it ends up putting 100, because it's the 9th car, and we told it start with number 9, into this value here. So it ends up putting the value of 100 in here, 0 in here, 50, and 0. So what will happen as a result of that is the red will be about half of its brightness, green will be turned off, the blue will be a fifth of its brightness, and the strobe function will be turned off. So you'll end up with a fixture that's kind of sort of a purple color, a light reddish purple color in this case. Remember, this train is generated multiple times per second, like faster than you can kind of see. So this train is constantly going around, and when it gets to the end here, it just falls off into the Dmx abyss, and the controller is in the process of generating another one, again, many times a second. So whatever value was in this train car starting at number 9, within fast as you can blink, there's another train car coming around, and the fixture does the same thing. It takes whatever value is in the train car 9, 10, 11, 12, puts it in the fixture, and does whatever that's supposed to do. Same for this one. If this particular fixture, if we had told it, this one is 9. If we had told this fixture it's number 1, told this fixture it's number 17, and we don't have anything, we didn't put anything in car number 1, so it kind of default it's zeros. So this fixture wouldn't do anything, and neither would this one. So this train car services all the fixtures based on this address. You don't have to start with 1. Common habit is to start with Dmx address 1. You don't have to do that. The train goes to all the fixtures in a serial fashion, one after the other, and the fixture will read the values from the car starting at whatever address you tell it. Once this is working, remember this is really just a cable, so it's plugged in. This plugs into the Dmx in, and then another cable Dmx out goes down here, plugs into Dmx in, Dmx out. Once this is working, you could unplug the Dmx cable here and plug it into the Dmx in here, and the output of this back up here. You can change the cables around any way you want, won't affect it, because the fixture reads the values that you starting at the address you programmed in here off the train. Okay, so let's go back and talk about the controllers just for a second. Oh, by the way, we're only talking about just turning on a red, green, and blue, perhaps a strobe. As these things get, the fixtures get more involved, they start taking up more channels. So you might have this particular fixture might need 8 channels in order to make it fully functional. This one may need 16 or more. So the number of channels that the device uses is again determined by the manufacturer. Those are referred to as a personality. So even though this fixture may require 8 channels to operate fully, you can probably, through the menu system, change its personality to say, you're really a 4-channel thing, just turn on red, green, and blue, and we won't worry about anything else that you can do, just turn it off. So it's possible to set these fixtures to operate differently according to what you're kind of trying to achieve. And you can look up the personality thing in the manual. Okay, so let's talk about the controllers now. We had mentioned the hardware controller is probably the most common. These are probably $100 solutions. The software solution is going to be more expensive. You have to buy a laptop and the software itself. This is probably a $500 type solution. What's the difference? In my opinion, I think the software solution is easier to use. It's more visual, stores things better. The software helps you do a lot of more creative things with the fixtures. However, again, this is probably the more common one. So if you've got this kind of a controller, and you know that your train has from 1 to 512 cars that can fill up. How does this thing get the information in this train? And the answer is, this case there are 8 sliders here, and if I were to take away sliders and slide it up and down, in this window you see a number go from 0 to 255. So if I slide the slider way up the top, you'll see it go to 255. Slider down the bottom goes to 0. Happens for every slider. And over here are, this is probably going to be labeled a fixture, I guess, these buttons. So if I press this, fixture number 1, what that's telling the controller is these values, these 8 values I have here, put those in train cars 1 through 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So if I press this for number 1, and I slide all these down to 0, and only take the very first one and raise it up to the top, what I'm telling it to do is put the value 255 in this train car, and 0 and all the rest from 1 to 8. If I press the fixture number 2 button, that's telling it take these 8 values here and put them in train car 9 through 16. So if I slide the thing up and down, in our example we said we had 150, so 100 might be here for the slider. This one would be at 0, so that was 0. 50 might be down here a little bit, and so forth. So these sliders would correspond to train car 9 through 16. So by pressing 1, I can fill up cars 1 through 8. Pressing fixture 2, fill up 9 through 16, and 3, 4, 5, and so forth. The challenge with the controllers is unless you use this thing often, you'll have trouble remembering how the various functions on the thing work. There are also control functions over here, and again, if you don't use the controller very often, it's confusing to use. So be prepared, and there's a manual comes with a controller. Be prepared to spend some time with the manual trying to understand how to get these things to work, and try it. What it says it does, and sometimes what it does, may be slightly different. So give that a crack. Also, I would recommend that you go to YouTube and type in the name of your controller, and there's probably somebody who's going to give you a little bit of a demonstration. Okay, so those controllers, the computer controllers, the value of the computer controller is, you can say, when you load the software program, I'm using a Chauvet color rail, and it'll import the file for you, and then on your screen it'll show you all the various channels and things it does. And you just say, yes, I want to do this, that, and it kind of does it. Sends this out on a Dmx connector. So the software is pretty nice. Again, if you don't use it very often, the software is probably better because it's more visually intuitive. However, both of these, they do the same thing. You end up with a train 512 cars long with some values stuffed in there. Okay, so that's the story. Let's talk about some challenges you might have with this thing, or just general questions. One question you may hear is around the cabling. Can I use DMX cabling or XLR? So there is a cable, a DMX cable. There's also an XLR cable. They look the same. In theory, there's a difference between them. It's the type of cable. My thought would be, if you're going to put a light system together, you're either going to have to go buy XLR or DMX cables. They really kind of look the same. They cost about the same. So I'd recommend you just go ahead and buy the DMX cables and put some identifier on it, a piece of colored tape or something, so you'll know that it's a DMX cable, and put it in your bag with all your other light stuff, and you'll be fine. You can look up what the difference is, and it's not terribly significant, particularly if you have short runs. If you're using 25 or 50 feet, then you probably could use either one of these will be fine. But if you're going to do it, why not just go ahead and get the DMX cables. Next question is Terminator. You're going to see the term a Dmx Terminator, which is a resistor. It goes on the end of this thing. We were saying this train, when it gets to the end, just falls off. In order to keep the signal from messing up, you can put a resistor in here. It looks just like a little USB key. it's a little smaller than this, and you just plug it in the DMX thing at the last fixture in the serial bus. You plug that Terminator in there, and that's fine. Some fixtures have the Terminator built in, so you can simply enable it through the menu. These Terminators are $5 or $10. You only need one, so buy two. So you only need one, and that's fine. So get in the habit of just using the Terminator. It will get rid of any issue of perhaps the thing's not working right because it's not properly terminated. So that's the cabling, the Terminator. The lights, I guess I can't stress enough how important it is to have the manual and spend some time with it. Just for an experiment, go online and type in Dmx wash light manual, and you'll get something or other. You'll get a Chauvet or whatever. And just download the manual. It's probably going to be 15 pages, and take a look. Now, keeping in mind what we talked about, you will see these terms somewhere in the manual, and you'd think it should be pretty simple, but it's going to be more confusing than you think it is. That'd be a good experiment. Just go online, download a manual for a simple fixture, take a look at it, and see if you can kind of understand, what they're talking about. And keep this in mind as well. This is kind of important, the channelization of what's happening. So I guess that's all I have for today. If you have questions, I know there's going to be lots of questions. So if you have questions, just put them down below, and I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. On a last note, if your thought is that you play in a band and you're hoping to get to the point where in a particular song when the drummer does crashes on the cymbals that your lights strobe in a certain way, then you carry on, that's way beyond what we're talking about. That's probably going to require a dedicated light light person, a light desk managing a console. So this really, again, is for people who want kind of just a simple introduction in how Dmx works. So once again, thank you very much. Hope everyone is enjoying the summer, and look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye now.